There is a storm outside your window, and you are trying to stop it by staring at the clouds. In the year 2026, we live in an era of total information, zero control. You are bombarded with global data, economic shifts, environmental collapses, political upheavals, and your brain, which was designed to manage a small tribe of 30 people, is trying to solve the problems of 8 billion. You have become an architect of anxiety. You spend your nights doom scrolling, researching every possible disaster, and pre-playing every potential failure in your mind. You tell yourself that this is preparation. You tell yourself that if you can just gather enough data, if you can just overthink the problem long enough, you can find a safe path through the chaos. But the truth is far more clinical. You are a prisoner of a control hallucination. You are trying to grip the wind with your bare hands. You are exhausted because you are carrying the weight of a world that does not belong to you. You have mistaken worry for action and paranoia for wisdom. The invisible script of our time tells you that if you aren't anxious, you aren't paying attention. But the high-status outlier knows that anxiety is the friction of a mind trying to do the impossible. You are trying to be the engineer of a universe that is fundamentally a wilderness. The muddy water principle. Alan Watts looked at the overthinker and saw a person trying to clear a lake by hitting the water with a stick. He frequently used the muddy water principle to explain the mechanics of peace. Imagine a bucket of water filled with silt and mud. You want the water to be clear so you can see the bottom. What do? Most people in 2026 start stirring the water. They think, if I just analyze this mud enough, if I just move it around fast enough, the clarity will come. But the harder you stir, the muddier the water becomes. Watts pointed out the only way to get clear water: you must leave it alone. By trying to control your future through overthinking, you are stirring the mud of your own consciousness. You are creating the very cloudiness you are trying to escape. Watts argued that the universe has an internal, self-organizing intelligence. The same intelligence that knows how to turn a seed into a tree without a business plan. When you stop stirring, the silt of your anxiety naturally settles to the bottom. Clarity is not something you create. It is something that appears the moment you stop interfering with the flow. You are exhausted because you have forgotten how to let the water be still. Prickly logic versus. These gooey reality Watts often divided the world into two types of people: the prickly and the gooey. The prickly people are the ones who love logic, definitions, boundaries, and, above all, control. They want life to be a series of neat, predictable boxes. They believe that if they can just label a problem, they have conquered it. The gooey people, however, recognize that the world is fluid, interconnected, and fundamentally messy. Your anxiety comes from being a prickly mind trying to live in a gooey universe. You want a 5-year plan in a world that can change in 5 seconds. You want certainty in a reality that is built on probability. This creates a state of cognitive friction. Every time the world doesn't fit into your prickly box, you experience a spike of cortisol. You try to build the box stronger, but the universe is a flood that doesn't care about your walls. The architect knows that the only way to survive the flood is to become the water. Instead of trying to control the chaos, you must develop the capacity to flow with it. This is not giving up, it is strategic surrender. It is the realization that your thinking mind is a small, useful tool for small, specific tasks, but it is a terrible master for a life. You are trying to navigate the ocean with a magnifying glass. To find peace, you must put down the glass and look at the stars. The survival of the unknowing. The invisible script tells you that knowledge is power. It tells you that the person with the most data wins. But in 2026, we are drowning in data and starving for wisdom. Watts suggested that the ultimate form of power is the courage to not know. When you admit that you cannot control the global economy, the future of AI, or the opinions of your peers, the pressure vanishes. You are no longer a god failing at his job. You are a human succeeding at his nature. By releasing the illusion of control, you reclaim your agency. You stop wasting your energy on the global horizon and start focusing on the local moment. You stop trying to predict the storm and start building a ship that can sail in any weather. The sheep are paralyzed by the news. Still, the outlier is energized by the now. He realizes that the only thing he truly controls is his own point of view, and that is the only thing he ever needed to control in the first place. The shield that becomes a cage. We must look at the architecture of your fear. Why do you crave control so desperately? It is because you have been sold the lie that security is a destination you can reach if you just work hard enough. In 2026, the invisible script tells you that security is a high-yield savings account, a 10-year career plan, and a perfectly monitored health routine. But the architect knows the clinical truth. Security is a superstition. It does not exist in nature. The universe is a constant, shifting explosion of change. By trying to secure your life, you are trying to fix the unfixable. Alan Watts observed that the word security comes from the Latin secura, meaning without care. We think that if we can just control enough variables, we can finally stop caring, stop worrying, and stop feeling. But the more you try to build security, the more anxious you become. Why? Because the more you have to protect, the more you have to lose. Your control has become a cage. You are so busy guarding the doors of your life that you have forgotten to live inside the house. You are a billionaire of caution and a bankrupt of experience. Watts argued that the only way to find true peace is to realize that insecurity is the very nature of life. When you stop fighting the gooey instability of existence, you realize that the fear was only the friction of your resistance, the parachute of presence. Imagine you are falling from a great height. You are terrified. You are flailing your arms, trying to find something to grab in the empty air. When this is how most people live their lives in the 24-hour news cycle of 2026. They are grabbing at ideologies, at metrics, and at plans, trying to stop the fall. Alan Watts offered a radical alternative. If you are falling, the only thing to do is to be the fall. If there is no ground to hit, then falling is just another way of flying. The illusion of control tells you that you are a falling object that needs to be saved. But the Watts perspective tells you that you are the gravity. You are the movement. When you stop trying to grab the air, you realize that the air is supporting you. The architect knows that control is a psychological parachute that never opens. It only adds weight to your descent. By embracing the art of falling, you move from a state of crisis to a state of flow. You realize that the chaos of the world is not a problem to be solved. It is a dance to be joined. You stop asking, "How do I stop this?" and start asking, "Where is this going?" This is the ultimate high-status move. While the sheep are screaming in the air, you are the one performing acrobatics. The fallacy of the separate pilot. The root of your control anxiety is the belief that you are a separate pilot sitting inside your head, steering a body through an external world. You think of yourself as a driver in a car. If the car crashes, it's your fault. If the road is bumpy, it's a problem you have to solve. Alan Watts dismantled this pilot hallucination with surgical precision. He pointed out that you do not drive your body. You are your body. You do not navigate the world. You are a feature of the world. Think of a whirlpool in a river. Is the whirlpool separate from the water? Does the whirlpool control the river? No. The whirlpool is something the river is doing at that specific point. Your life, your choices, and your control are just something the universe is doing at this specific point in space and time. When you realize that there is no pilot, the responsibility for the universe vanishes. You don't have to control the global economy any more than you have to control the rotation of the Earth. It is happening. You are a part of the happening. The architect knows that the ego is just a passenger who has convinced himself he is the driver. By firing the pilot, you finally get to enjoy the ride. The wisdom of the muddy water, level 2. We return to the muddy water principle, but we move deeper. In part 1, we talked about leaving the water alone to find clarity. Now we must realize that the mud is not your enemy. The mud, the chaos, the uncertainty, the gooey mess of 2026 is the very soil from which your life grows. Alan Watts observed that you cannot have order without disorder. You cannot have certainty without mystery. By trying to control the chaos, you are trying to kill the very thing that makes life alive. A perfectly controlled world would be a world of plastic. It would be a museum, not a forest. The outlier does not seek to eliminate the mud. He seeks to master the silt. He realizes that his overthinking is just a way of adding more dirt to the bucket. By dropping the need to know, he achieves a state of active ignorance. He knows that he doesn't know, and in that unknowing, he is finally free to act. He is no longer paralyzed by the what-ifs. He is energized by the is. He has moved from the prickly anxiety of the planner to the gooey power of the creator. The quicksand of the mind. We have identified the treadmill of overthinking. We have analyzed the pilot hallucination. Now, we must execute the final move in the game of the other, the law of inverse effort. Alan Watts often compared the human mind to a person trapped in quicksand. What is the instinctive reaction when you feel yourself sinking? You struggle, you kick, you flail your arms to control your position. But in quicksand, the more you struggle, the faster you sink. The only way to survive is to lie back and stay still. In the chaotic landscape of 2026, your control anxiety is the struggling. Every time you overthink a global crisis, every time you micromanage your partner, and every time you rehearse a future failure, you are kicking in the quicksand. You are dragging yourself deeper into the muddy water. Watts argued that the most powerful things in life are achieved through inverse effort. You cannot force sleep. The harder you try, the more awake you stay. You cannot force a memory. It only returns when you stop searching for it. You cannot force a meaningful life. The architect knows that control is a form of violence against the self. By releasing the grip, you don't lose the world. You finally allow the world to support you. You stop being the victim of the quicksand and start being the surface of the earth. Winning without fighting. Watts was fascinated by the philosophy of judo, which literally means the gentle way. In judo, you do not meet force with force. If an opponent pushes you, you do not push back. You pull. You use their own momentum to send them flying over your shoulder. This is the ultimate strategy for the chaos of 2026. The invisible script tells you to fight the future. It tells you to combat uncertainty with more data and more prickly logic. But the world is too big to fight. The global shifts, the technological leaps, and the social upheavals are opponents with infinite mass. If you push against them, you will break. The outlier practices psychological judo. When the world throws a crisis at him, he doesn't try to control it. He steps aside. He lets the chaos pass through him. He uses the energy of the change to pivot his own life. While the sheep are exhausted from trying to stop the river, the architect is surfing the waves. He has realized that security is not the absence of danger, but the mastery of risk. He doesn't want a controlled world. He wants a fluid world where his own agility is his only protection. Turning the chaos into a canvas. As we close this final excavation, you must undergo the ultimate transition. You must stop seeing chaos as a threat and start seeing it as your canvas. Alan Watts pointed out that a perfectly ordered universe would be a dead universe. It would be a crystal, beautiful but frozen and silent. The gooey messiness of your life, the uncertainty of your career, and the void of the future are the only places where creation can happen. You have been trying to organize the garden, not realizing that you are the gardener. The illusion of control was a wall you built to protect yourself from the great outdoors of the universe. But the wall has become a prison. The architect tears down the wall. He looks out at the storm of 2026 and he smiles. Why? Because he knows that he is not in the storm. He is the storm. He is the energy that is currently vibrating as this specific human moment. Alan Watts's final cosmic joke was this: you are the one who is doing it all. You aren't a victim of a chaotic universe. You are the universe playing a game of chaos with itself. Once you realize this, the anxiety becomes excitement. The fear becomes awe. You stop trying to steer the ship and realize that you are the entire ocean. The end of the script, the series is complete. The invisible script has been burned to ash. You have moved from the trap of better to the sovereignty of the now. You have unmasked the actor, killed the future self, and walked out of the theater of shame. And now, you have released the illusion of control. The world of 2026 is still chaotic. The muddy water is still swirling, but you are no longer stirring the bucket. You are sitting on the bank of the river, watching the silt settle, and seeing, for the first time, the bottom of the lake. You are no longer a subject of the machine. You are the master of the void. Comment below to seal the final realization of this journey. The pilot is a ghost. I am the flow. The music has reached its final chord. The architect remains silent. Subscribe to stay centered in the eternal now.